Today is the 25th of May of 2016. My name is Zachary Snyder. I am acquainted to Vern as a family friend and neighbor. Assisting us today is Alan Snyder as our cameraman. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So to start out, Vern, where were you born?
Well, Zach, I don't think there's very many people here in Alto that are still living within 300 feet of where they were born. I was born in the house just east of me.
Nice.
85 years ago, last month.
Wow. So, what were your parents' names?
My mother's name was Vera E. Yeiter. Maiden name was Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. My dad's name was Carl S. Yeiter. He was a barber. My mother was, what do you call them? Homebody person, homemaker. And my dad, he was a veteran of World War I and had asthma. He lost one lung due to mustard gas over in France.
Wow. And
he had problems with his breathing due to the asthma and the fact that he only had one lung. And he passed away in September of 1949 at the age of 60. And he passed away in Tucson, Arizona. That's where he was starting his fourth winter for his health out there. My brother Bob, he was 5 years my senior, went with my dad out to Tucson in 46, 47. And when they came back in the spring of 47, Dad said, "Vern, you're going back with me this fall to finish up high school," which was sophomore, junior, and senior years. We had a little argument because I said, "No, Dad, no way am I going to leave my friends here and roll and go out to some hick cowboy town and go to school." But as it turned out, in 1947, the fall of 1947, Dad and I pulled the trailer out to Tucson, and I had a big surprise. It wasn't a hick cowboy town. It was way ahead of the school that I was going to, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm very honored, in a sense, in my way of thinking, to have been able to attend the school of its class at that time, back in 1947, 48, 49. I graduated in 1950. I've attended a number of my class reunions. The last main class reunion was the 60th, a little over 5 years ago. Last October, I took 4 days, the first part of the month. I left here on the 1st of October, and on the 3rd of October, on Saturday, we had a gathering of classmates that were able to go to be there, which was around 70, just for dinner, nothing else. The other reunions always was basically 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And in the 60th class reunion, they decided not to have any more main reunions. They just wanted to drop the having reunions. But our secretary, Barb, she kept me in touch and let me know what they had planned, what people had talked about, let me know. And in fact, she did. I was able to make the 65th gathering, you might say. And my class was the largest class that Tucson ever had. It was only 3 grades, sophomore, junior, and senior. And in 47, my first year out there, the registration was larger just for my class alone than what roll was K through 12. Over 1,000. But approximately 875 of us graduated in 1950.
It's a lot of people.
And the school has grown. They have finally got back to regular hours, being crowded as it was, we had 2 shifts. It depended on what side of 6th Street you lived on, north or south, what hours you went to. If you lived on the north side, starting out the year, you might be going in the morning. Come the end of the semester, that changed over, you could start in the afternoon. Morning hours were 7 to 12, an hour off for dinner, and go back to school in the afternoon for the afternoon shift, 1 to, I gotta stop and think here now, pardon me, 1 till 6 was the afternoon shift. And so at the end of that semester, if you go back the next year, that's the shift that you started on, was the afternoon. And again, it's in the middle of the year, semester, you change back to whatever. So we shifted back and forth. In Tucson, when I left there in the spring of '50, after graduating, was the size of about 50,000 people. Today, it's a village of about 125, 135 million. It really has grown.
Yes.
And of course, the University of Arizona is there, just like Ann Arbor is here, University of Michigan. It's a big, that has grown quite a bit over the years, along with the town. But when I came back from Tucson, during the 3 years I was going to school, coming back in the springtime, both 1948, 49, and 50, I was working for, or helping a farmer for the summer months. And in 1950, until I was able to get a permanent job and whatnot, I finally got a job in July of, late June, early July of 1950 with a truck company as a dock worker. And I worked on the dock until, it was until January 1951. 3 or 4 of us got together and we were talking about our numbers are coming up for the draft. And so we decided we don't want to be drafted. We want to pick what service we go into and have an opportunity to see what we can get in the service, what they'll have us doing in the service. So we all picked the Air Force. So that's what we did. We went down to Detroit, we were sworn in on the 7th of January, 1951. Then they flew us flew to Chicago to make the main trip down to Lackland Airport by San Antonio for our basic training. And at the end of March, after basic training, we had, during basic training, they gave us the gas chamber. They had a building there that they would send us all into the building with gas mask and say, gas mask, so we'd have to put them on. They'd already exploded the bombs, you might say, or let the gas loose, so you had to try to use your gas mask on before you got a gas in your lungs and whatnot. And it was quite interesting. That was just one of the trainings. Still, we had rifle practice, arms, firing arms, marches, calisthenics, and such. Just basically exercise and march. Well, you get used to marching, and you got flat feet. You're hurting from the end of the day, but we had good food. We had basic, not only the basic training, but you never knew when you were going to wind up on MP duty or KP duty, which is kitchen police. You you help clean up at the end of the meal. You'd be in there about 4 o'clock in the morning. They wake you up and take you to the KP and whatnot. And you might get out of there 10 o'clock at night, if you're lucky, maybe later. Because basically they were feeding right up until 10, 11 o'clock, so you had to clean up after everybody. You had guard duty, depending on what shift you might be lucky to get. Seemed like every time I got stuck on guard duty, it was 10 till 2. And it was always cool in January, February, and March down there. The nights would turn cold, and if you had some rain. One night I walked back into the guardhouse with my right arm more or less frozen, which it wasn't really frozen, but I had ice on my raincoat, ice on my rifle, and whatnot, just because it froze on my outer clothing. You have garbage duty, which you're riding around in a truck picking up the garbage truck from all around the base. And we might have that once or twice. I think I had it twice when I was down there for about 3 months. We got down there on the night of January. I'm taking a rough guess. I said we were sworn in on the 7th. I'm going to say we arrived in San Antonio on the evening of January the 9th. And once we got to the base, our quarters were in tents. They gave us a pillowcase, a pillow, a sheet, and you went out into the tent and picked a cot that they had set up. And that's what it was, and it was cool. So you had any clothes you had, you put extra clothes on to try to stay warm. We were in the tents for probably 4 or 5 days before we was able to get into a set of barracks. And they had 2 sets of barracks, a single floor and a double deckers. But it went back and forth. We had barracks for a while, and then we go back to tents for before another session of the training would start, and then we go back into another training session would start. We'd go back into the barracks, and I can't remember exactly what it was we ended up with, but it depended on the type of barracks. Single barracks, 1-story barracks were tar paper barracks and covered with more or less building paper to keep the weather out. The 2 stories, they were wood framed, just like a normal house with wood siding and everything. But it was a nice experience to have to go through. Some things you didn't like to do, but you had to do them anyway. You learned how to march, how to bend the formation in step. That was the main thing with marching, was had to stay in step. And to keep your pace, keep your distance from the fellow in front of you and the person beside you, or persons beside you, depending on whether you had somebody on each side of you. Counter cadence, that was something, they had a bunch of songs that they'd sing while you're marching. And then in the march, I got transferred, after the end of training, basic training, I got transferred to Scott Air Force Base near Belleville, Illinois, which is about 30 miles east of East St. Louis, or St. Louis, whichever city you want to think about. And that was there for radio maintenance, communications, maintenance, repair, being able to repair radio equipment and radar equipment. And I was there for a year, and that's where I met my wife Nancy. She was in the Army, the Finance Center over in St. Louis, and we had an airman's NCO club. They didn't. They were just had buildings for barracks and whatnot, like a motel or whatever. And if they had cars, they'd drive over, or else they'd grab a bus and take the bus over. That's where I met my wife. She had a friend of hers and a friend of mine had met, and they got married, and that's where I met my wife, was at their wedding. And then we wound up getting married ourselves. When I got transferred from there, after school, I got transferred to Walker Air Force Base in Roswell, New Mexico. Yeah, I'm from outer space. We got people from Mars and every place all around town, you know. It's quite a place out there now. They've got a museum for all the space people. And it's quite an issue. I have been to all the so-called crash sites, seen them all. I was out there 13 years ago to make just reconnaissance. Some of the buildings are still there. They closed the base in 1964. But the main hangar was still there, the water tower was there. But I've been in the hangar where the body of one of the aliens had been shown, whatnot. And I did have the opportunity of I never went overseas except for this one excursion. Once we was in the trailer park, it doesn't take long to know what just about all the servicemen are doing. And one afternoon after I got home from the base, the captain of one of the planes came up to me and wanted to know if I'd like to take a flight over to Japan over the weekend. He said, my radio man is sick and I don't have anybody to replace him. I said, well, I'm ground. He says, well, what's that difference whether they're ground or air? They're all radio equipment. I said, okay. So he writes out a letter or a request. I take it to my CO. He writes out a reply to his note. I take back to him and he takes it to his CO to give me permission to fly with them over to Japan. And both bases that I was stationed at were all B-36. That's the biggest bomber that the Air Force ever had. It had 6 prop pusher engines, 3 on each wing, on the back side of the wing. Not on the front, but on the back. And 2 jet pods on each wingtip. You look at those planes and you would wonder, how in the world does a big, huge piece of machinery like that get off the ground? They get going down the runway and the takeoff, and they get so far down, and at a certain point, they would ignite the jet pods, and that would get them up in the air and get them to above a certain height above ground, and then they would just turn the jet pods off and climb to altitude, whatever altitude that they flew at, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 feet or whatever, with the prop engines. When I first saw B-36, was in Tucson. There's an air base out there, Davis Mountain Air Force Base, and they had B-36s out there, and they didn't have the jet pods at that time because jets were just starting to come around, jet engine and such. It didn't the fact that Germany had already developed jet engines. We were in the process but hadn't got that far. But they had what they called jet pods on each side of the fuselage, about 6 of them on each side of the fuselage, and they would use those to get off the ground. With one main thing when they took off with that was they better have a place to land that they could get fuel from again, because once they had the jet pods on the wings, then had modified the wings to have fuel tanks for jet fuel on the jet pods. But it was quite a flight. We left on a Thursday morning, and bright and early, and we landed at Hickam Field in Hawaii, and then we flew on to Japan. We were near Tokyo for approximately 24 hours before we had to be back in the air again, and we landed at Hickam Field again on the way back, and we got back late Sunday evening. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 4 days to Japan and back in this great big B-36. It never saw action. It was just mainly during the Cold War because after that, they started developing other bombers and such. But I was at Walker from late March, early April, 1952, or 1952, until June 1953, when I got transferred. At that time, the base was called Limestone Air Force Base, up in Limestone, Maine, northern tip of Maine. And I transferred, my wife and I pulled the trailer from Roswell to Limestone, and it's a very cold place in the wintertime. We got up there shortly after the 4th of July. We went through a full winter, and in the winter, well, I got to in the war room and guiding aircraft, and had to take on phone calls and such, locations of the aircraft, and phone that information to other officers and other branches of the base to where the planes were and such. But on New Year's Eve, 53, 54, my truck wouldn't start. My wife was working at a hospital. Her gang was taken off at midnight to go party, and I told the guy I was going to relieve I'd be there early so he could be with his family. It didn't work out that way. My truck wouldn't start, and the thing was that if you drove off and out on the base, you could wear your fatigues, your work clothes. But if you walked off around the base, you had to be in your Class A uniform. So seeing my truck wouldn't start, I had to go back in and put my Class A uniform on. And luckily, I was just out, our trailer was just outside the main gate. The only problem was, I couldn't even get the air police to, one of their vehicles, take me up, pick me up, and take me into my job. I had to walk 2.5 miles.
Wow.
To work. Everybody was going off base. But the thing was, base commander's orders, Class A uniform, no earmuffs, no scarf. Well, the overcoat had a nice high collar, but the thing was, there was no collar button. So here I was, it was minus 45 degrees. I don't know what the wind chill was, but it was 45 minus.
That's cold.
And when I walked into the building, naturally I was late, and just felt like somebody taking a knife and sliced my ears off. And I walked into the office in the war room. The gentleman I was relieving looked at me and he said, "Where you been, Vern?" He said, "I thought he was gonna..." "My God, Vern," he said, "what chimney you been down? Christmas was a week ago." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Your ears are just as black as coal." So I went into the latrine, and sure enough, they were black. Burned, they just burned like they were on fire. And so for 8 hours there I was with my, having a phone at one ear or the other all night long. Went to sick call in the morning, and my wife and her gang picked me up, took me to sick call. And Doc said, "Oh, there's nothing you can do for it, except keep them warm." Gave me a handful of APC pills and keep my ears wrapped so I don't get chap. He was going to get shaved during the night. About a month and a half later, I was at the hospital, walking around the down the corridor, turned the corner and headed another direction. And just after I had done that, from the other corner, somebody come turned the corner down there and started at me, and then he recognized me before I recognized him. It turned out to be the doctor I had seen on New Year's Day morning, a sick call. He was looking me over, and I asked him, "What you looking at, Doc?" He says, "I'm looking at your ears." I said, "What about them?" He says, "You still got them." I said, "What do you mean I still got them?" He said, "I thought when you left that morning, I heard the boy's going to lose his earlobes." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He said, "They didn't want you to worry." I said, "Well, how would I be feeling if they'd start dropping off?" He laughed. At least he said, "You still got them. For a number of years, it started getting cold, 40 degrees or lower. I had to cover my ears. And over the years, I got to the point where it don't bother me anymore." But Maine, Loring Air Force Base, the Limestone name was dropped and Loring was renamed to Loring Air Force Base. But looking at the map to find limestone, you go up to Madagascar, Maine, or Edmonton, Canada. It's a border cities. By a T, it's 40 miles. By highway, it's 45 miles to limestone, from the northern tip of Maine. It's not a recreational area. They grew a lot of potatoes up there, along with hay, corn, and what, but they used to, if you ever see a bag of Maine, Aroostook County potatoes, that's where they come from, that area up there. Caribou was about 10 miles west. Presque Isle was another 10 miles southwest of Caribou, and about 35 miles southeast of Presque Isle is Houghton, and that's where our interstate Highway 95 began. It was in Houghton, right on the border. And I call them, the base was carved out. They were still building the base when we left there in January of '55. It was basically a new base, and it was all built out of a forest of what I call dirty jack pine. It had a 3-mile long runway. The runway is probably 8 or 9 feet thick in order to stand up to the weight of the aircraft or the planes landing on it, and about 3 blocks wide. They had pads off the side. I got assigned different duties a couple of times. I was on 90-day TDY, temporary duty, to the Air Police. The first week or two wasn't too bad, because it was all classes to letting us know what our duties were, what we could and could not do, and how we're supposed to act. My duties turned out to be out on the pad, walking around a B-36 and challenging anybody that approached. And they had a base alert one night, and a base alert back, well, anytime a base alert is, especially in the Air Force, is they have aircraft, is to see how fast they can get all of their aircraft in the air. And as it happened that night, my plane had a little problem, and swarms of people come around. Along come a truck pulling a trailer with a bubble on its back, and I was informed, you get up on that thing and sit there and don't let anybody within 20 feet of it. It was an A-bomb, and it was about the size of a car, a normal car, and it fit the B-36 could carry 2 of them, but they only had one for training basis. They had others in their storage bunker. But that was quite an experience to have an A-bomb and have to set on it and keep everybody away from it. Not many people see one of those, and I hope we never have to see one in any conflict again. But that was luckily, it was in the summertime and warm weather, it wasn't in the middle of the winter. When we left there in January, we just had a snowstorm that day, and when we pulled out of the trailer park, there was probably a good 12, 13, 14 inches of snow the night before, and all the roads were snow covered. And it took me home. It took me about 3 days or 4 days to get home, go to the trailer.
Wow.
But after that, I came back to figuring I had a job at the trucking company, and I didn't pass the physical. I had a little problem that I didn't realize I had, and I didn't pass the physical, so I started looking for other jobs. The truck company did not inform me that during my 4 years I had accumulated enough seniority I could have bumped in 2 or 3 other jobs that my physical wouldn't have had any bearing on it at all. But they didn't say anything, they just kept quiet, because I would have been bumping somebody that had been there as long as I had, longer than I had. And I shouldn't say that's the wrong way. That I was bumping somebody that had the job for a lesser period of time than what I had been in the service. So I started looking for work, and I had my application in I don't know how many different factories, until one of my friends said, "Why don't you come on down to the railroad?" He worked on the railroad. And so that's what I did. I went down to the railroad, and Station Grand Central, and applied for a job, and went to work the next day. And I worked for 36 years for the C&O or B&O, whatever you want to call it, Chesapeake Ohio Railroad. And I worked all over the state with that. I was basically an agent, operator. I moved trains, I controlled the movement of trains. I made billings and whatnot for the billing of the freight to be picked up and dropped off. And that was basically it until I retired in 1991, and been retired since.